Now, I still enjoy the season 48 cast. I still enjoy the fact that I am watching Survivor every Wednesday night. It still brings joy, even when I'm frustrated at the show, even when I feel the editing is doing no favors to any of these contestants at this point. It's weird, it's wild. It feels like we watched the same episode twice in a row, but luckily for our podcast, we didn't watch the same episode in a row, so we have new things to talk about, which I wasn't sure if that was going to happen if we remained in the status quo, but we had some interesting things happen. Was I happy with this episode? Not particularly. I was a little upset. There may have been some very heated words between myself and my roommate as we discussed the conclusion of it and just kind of talking about, because I think what it comes down to, and I think it's my frustration, and unfortunately, as we're recording this, I haven't had a chance to listen to what Phil and Blake said on Digging Deeper earlier, but my concerns with this season right now doesn't lie in the cast. It doesn't lie in what's happening, whatever. We need seasons like this to motivate crazy gameplay, right? Like after we get a season like 46, which is the last full season this cast saw, right? Where things were a little more fluid. We were seeing people get picked off with idols in their pockets. It makes sense that a strong alliance would be the, pendulum swinging the other way in response to that type of thing. And we need seasons like this to remind us of what makes Survivor so good. And that's the fact that
Survivor started out with a pagonging. That's how we got the term. So,
yeah.
Hey.
And while this isn't really
somewhere.
and we're not getting, it isn't technically a pagonging. It feels quite pagongish.
No, yeah, it's not a pagonging, but it's just
it's a strong alliance. We haven't seen it in a long time. We haven't seen a strong alliance dominate in a very, very long time. So do we see a change up next week? I don't know. I hope so. See Andrew, Andrew asking, are we getting a change up next week? I hope so, because I want a little bit of adversity for this strong four as they're pulling through the end. And that's because I think what makes this season feel different than some of the other seasons, and when we look at some of the lesser enjoyed seasons in Survivor, we look at our Redemption Islands, our South Pacifics, those type of seasons.
John, don't you dare throw South Pacific in the
ring. I said lesser. Even like Phil's reviled hatred for All Stars, things like that, right? One World. These seasons that are generally considered to be lesser seasons, less gameplay going on, dominant alliances taking over the game, getting to the end. What's different with 48 and makes it more similar to like Redemption Island than One World, in my opinion, is we don't have an opposition to what this strong four is doing. And we're very much being told that Joe has the best chance to win. We're seeing how likable Joe is for the most part. We haven't really seen like faults in his gameplay until he got a bit paranoid at the end of this week's episode.
Right.
But we haven't seen anyone oppose them at all, right? And I think that's where the frustration from the fan base is going on. And please, anyone who's listening, like comment in the live chat or on the video afterwards to say if I'm maybe off base here. But I think what's really frustrating is we see these people acknowledging they're on the bottom and they don't have a chance of winning against someone and not doing anything about it. We saw it last week with Mitch. We saw it again this week with Kyle. We spent the entire episode this time. Like, at least last week, you had Joe win immunity, so something had to happen in the end. Were we disappointed that it was Star and Mary going after each other at the end of last week? Absolutely. But this week we get it again. Like, the entire episode is about Joe. We get that like very close finish in the immunity challenge that has Joe lose. And we get the boring exit of Mary instead. As we spent the entire hour and a half leading up to that with these people saying, yeah, we can't beat Joe. And this is mathematically, the numbers work here to take him out. Why don't they make the move? I'm very interested to see what they have to say in next week's episode, in our penultimate episode of the season already, and go from there. But because there's just been that support and like going back to, okay, we'll just work with Joe, it feels like it's a little boring. And it's kind of how, to me right now, and maybe this is a little off base for a lot of people, but this kind of feels like Palau at this point. And now I'm not saying Palau is like a bottom ranked Survivor season by any means, right? But it's a very similar case where we didn't have an opposition to the very clear front runner of the season the entire time.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's me and the casuals over here saying I wasn't rooting for Joe to go home, but I also didn't I also just don't want to hear about things that don't happen either.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's other content, which there clearly is, because that's why I like this episode a little bit better, because we got other content of like the fishing, so it's not like they're not doing anything else on the beach. So, or talking about something else. I don't know. Maybe we get more Mary talk, more of Joe's tentacles out there rather than the other side of let's get Joe out, let's get Joe out. So my issue is like kind of, I guess, what we're being shown and why are we being shown this if Joe doesn't go home. Let's get the other side of it, of Joe's perspective. Like, thank God I won immunity, but I'm good with my allies. They're not going to go for me. Oh, I didn't win immunity, but I trust in Shane. I just trust in Kyle, that I trust in Eva, that nothing's going to happen. Like, that's, I think we need a perspective shift a little bit with that.
I agree. And part of that comes to the fact that when we're watching this episode and we're seeing how everything's playing out, it feels different than how we've seen Survivor in a while. And Brian Cohen had a tweet last week saying that Survivor should really take a bit of a, just like look at like what Bravo TV shows do for their reality TV shows and kind of dunk on the contestants a little more, because it does feel like we're at a point where everyone's getting like this safe edit. And maybe that's a response to something like 46, where, the cast got like a lot of vitriol towards them because of the way that they were responding to things and everything like that. But Mary, in her exit press today, said she was completely ostracized for these several last days.
And it didn't totally show. Like, it did, but it didn't, because they showed us with her talking to she was talking to everyone. So we saw her conversations, not really her like just hanging out.
Yeah, and we didn't even get that. For me, I think the problem with this episode is that we didn't even get that secondary thing of like, okay, we're just going to let Mary go. It kind of came down to an offhand comment by Camilla towards the end of like, I just don't know if we can trust Mary. And it again goes into my biggest qualm with this season is we're being told a lot without being shown a lot, right? Yeah. Like last week, Mitch says, Star and Mary voted for me, so I don't really trust them. It's like, that's great, but like, have you made an effort to figure out why or anything like that? We're not seeing anything to work towards that, to build a bond of trust. And we don't have this idea of like, why do people not trust Star? Why do people not trust Mary? When David all of a sudden is like bringing Mary into the strong five, we're just like, where did this come from? Because they're not showing it. They're just telling us that it's happening. And it feels so weird after the last couple of seasons of Survivor.
Yeah. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of this episode and start with our Outwit moment. We are choosing to go get an advantage at some place. This season, it is Journeys. Typically, it's an exile. So let's talk. All right, well, let's talk 48. So we have Mary wanting to go because she's on the bottom and wants to get an advantage, which this would have been crucial for her. And then we have Eva wanting to go in the sense of, I feel like she said, oh, I'll go, because no one was really piping up about like, oh, Mary's the only one saying that she's going. I guess I'll contest, kind of how Rachel did it. And then, other people kind of trickled in being like, all right, I'll go. So then they all drew the rock out of the bag and Eva winds up going here. So we have something like John in San Juan del Sur when 2 idols were just played. So he knows that there's an idol out there, and one of his allies just won that reward to be able to send him to exile. So he's just like, I will gladly volunteer so you don't have to choose, so I can get the idol in my pocket.
Yeah, and this is one of the most awkward moments of San Juan del Sur. This is the time where we start seeing the like giving up your rewards for everyone and everything. This is the coconut shop challenge that they, conspire to give it to decide Missy's going to win. Jeff calls the challenge there, and John continues the whole like, oh well, we'll keep the good vibes going. Just send me to exile. It's cool. I'll do it. Volunteers to go. But at least we do get that moment where he's saying it is strategic, right? Obviously, 2 idols were just played. There's going to be a new idol clue there. I can take advantage of this to get another idol in the game.
Which he does.
Yeah. It makes sense. Going back on something you said earlier in the podcast, McKenna, about maybe they might have more material to show in this episode. I don't know if they do, because they showed us this journey that amounted to literally nothing.
Well, you have to.
Do you? Because we know for a fact that there are advantages that have been in play in previous seasons that just get cut out of the edit if they're found and not used, right? Because we know that in 42, there was an idol nullifier that was found and was never relevant to the story. So they just didn't put it in there. I don't think if we didn't have a journey segment this episode, everyone would be like, man, where was the final 7 journey?
Oh, I mean, yeah, nobody's missing it, but I do think everyone is expecting journeys to happen. So, like, not having a journey since, like, would Eva's escape from tribal council or escape from camp be counted as a journey? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think like the last like journey would be when Star lost her vote at that Mario Party
Right,
game.
which was right at the beginning of the merge.
But like, is that such a bad thing? Like we often see Exile Island end around that time too, right?
No, we don't.
Sometimes.
It is the entire time. Anywho, I don't like. I feel like I did forget about journeys, and then I was like, oh, a boat. But I think also at the same point, some people would have been like, okay, there's supposed to be like, why aren't we having another journey right about now? But
it's so different than Rachel's journey last time.
Yes, it was. So we also see this happen with like Amanda and Parvati in Micronesia because they don't want Eric and Jason and all the other side, the not widows, to get the idol. Amanda is also feeling when she volunteers like more toward the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So she wants to get it. Parv finds the idol and leaves it on the island. Speaking of advantages not being shown.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, we know for a fact that that's been corroborated at this point that Parvati did in fact find the idol after going there, and the entire intention of going to Exile Island was to make sure that Eric didn't, so that they could pull off, the move at 5-5.
Yeah. So, I mean, say you are in like Eva's spot or like in the majority alliance spot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you personally want to go to an exile, go on a journey to try and save the alliance from the bottom people? Because this would have been absolutely crucial for Mary.
It would have. I agree. I think it's really interesting in the new era to take this into context as when we compare it to these other 2 moments of like going to Exile Island for it. Because in the new era, they're going to have to wager their vote.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like, it might be hey, you have the option to wager your vote, you might not. Or like this one where it's like, okay, you get your vote back. It's fairly easy to get your vote back, as we saw Ava do. But like, or we saw Eva do it, but is it worth it? Like that's the question,
So
right? Because in this instance,
in Exile, it's you're wagering your social capital.
that's easier to recoup though when there's 3 days too, right? Like there's more time to recoup that social capital.
You could be spending 2 days on Exile.
I think Jeff always mentions when they'll return
Before the next immunity challenge.
Yeah, so I think it's fine, and especially like really, and it's different in like Blood versus Water when John goes because you have
Exile is different in a bunch of seasons where it could be like 1 day, it could be 2 days, days depending on when you go.
But the thing here is, I think for the strong four who think they are this very tight alliance, they are very confident they have Camilla, they have Mitch, and like it's all of them versus Mary. It kind of makes sense for everyone to be like, okay, whatever, we'll go do this. But in reality, with Eva, Joe, Shaheen, and Kyle, again, like we saw this entire episode was about the point of like, will Kyle flip, right? Mm-hmm. And I think if Eva doesn't have a vote, what's stopping him from flipping at that point?
True. So I think, yeah, it really just depends on who you are and where you are in your tribe to be able to go on a journey or go to Exile. If you are in like a solid place like John, I feel like it was risky for Eva to go, especially since she has so many more advantages. By so many, I mean 2 advantages in her pocket.
Where are all the advantages on this season? Wild thing for us to be saying and complaining about, but where are all the advantages? We haven't had a post-merge idol. We haven't even, and this is also going into the edit. We haven't even seen people looking for idols.
I'm okay with this.
I don't know. I think
if next week we get advantages out the wazoo, I am blaming you and solely you.
Well, Eva's safety without power is expired now.
Yes, but so Jeff throw something in.
The only advantage left in the game is Eva's idol that everyone knows about.
Shot in the dark is expired now too.
That is correct. It expires at 7 now, right?
Mm-hmm. Or it has been.
Yeah. So Eva's idol, which she said she is playing no matter what at 5.
Yeah.
So you have this little bit of leeway, rest of cast. But it's just weird. Like we haven't seen people looking for idols and things like that. And maybe it's just because, again, it doesn't amount to anything. But like Survivor likes showing us when people find idols and then are voted out with idols. Mm-hmm. So clearly there just like are no idols. I think if we took that first vote, was it the first vote or the second vote? That vote from earlier in the season for Survivor 50. About advantages. I think you would have more people vote for more advantages now than you did back then.
I don't know. I think this is nice.
I just, maybe it's just because the idol's known. Maybe that's why I'm feeling like I just want some hidden information. But
maybe
it feels weird. It just feels weird that the only potential to gain an idol since the merge has been Eva in a game of chance.
True. All right, everyone. We are going to move on to Outplay. This is the reason we are watching The Great Lie, the Dead Grandma Lie episode of Pearl Islands over on the Patreon. So watch that so you can listen to us. It's Jeff messing up who wins immunity for a challenge. In this episode, he says the phrase, Joe wins, psych, never mind, that the picture is wrong. It's not on the right side. Camilla, you rang in second, you win immunity. So it's not as egregious as these other ones where basically, challenges are paused and reworked and things like that. But it's still like Jeff Flubbing who ultimately won the challenge. So we'll start with Pearl Islands. And this is the word it's not word search, but like
It's a word scramble, technically, right?
like a word scramble challenge, where Burton wins immunity, air quotes, and then they have to restart the challenge because he spells liaison wrong, and Dara winds up winning the challenge ultimately.
This is really interesting, especially when we compare it to 48, because with 48, it's a puzzle. And it's really funny because normally in these word scramble puzzles, it's the word spelt wrong, right? And trust me, there were a lot of bad spelling going on in this episode of 48. What is it? Got fun betrayal, whatever Mish was trying to spell. Kyle is like reversing letters, and again, this is really important with if you listen to the recap on Wednesday, Will, who has been a challenge guy, knows how challenges work on these, right? They specifically paint the sides of the puzzle different colors, so you know what way to orient them, especially when there are words that have two of the same letter, so that you know that you're on the right side and you don't have like 4 possibilities or whatever it is. So that's why there's this. But this puzzle was very different when it came to this word because it was this arch, but it also had these 2 eye pieces at the end. Eyes as in like eyeballs, not like the letter I. Confusing, I know, because we're talking about letters. But because of that, Joe switches one around. It's such an easy thing to notice. Or to miss, right? Because you're frantically trying to do it. You're just trying to slap it in. And especially because of how close Camilla was to catching. And it was just a hasty thing. And that's what I think differentiates 48 from this Pearl Islands moment. Because this is a hasty thing. And Pearl Islands, that challenge is kind of weird. It's a spelling word, or it's a spelling challenge. They have to find 3 3-letter words, 4 4-letter words, 5 5-letter words, 6 6-letter words, and 2 7 or more letter words out of the phrase Survivor Pearl Islands. And they can't use plurals. They can't use proper nouns.
They can't use Survivor Pearl or Islands.
Yeah, that's right. You can't use any of the words that are already there. And spelling counts. And you have to call a check when you think you have it. And if you spell a word wrong, you're just out of the challenge and it continues as it goes. Which is why it's so weird when Jeff calls it, "Oh, Burden, you win." And then it's like, liaison has another I there. This is a different length of word now. So you're losing in multiple places. I guess that's kind of how it works sometimes, where it's like you miss a letter. That makes sense to get eliminated. If you have like letters reversed, doesn't really make sense to be drop them out of this challenge. But
it had to you had to spell it correctly. And if a letter is reversed, it's not spelled correctly.
Yeah. I just feel sorry for anyone with dyslexia having to do this challenge.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. And especially on that time crunch with the chalk, if you're not used to drawing on chalk. Yes, chalk was a thing that existed back in 2003.
Have a time crunch, though, because as long as you are spelling these words correctly and taking somewhat your time, you could win the challenge. Because if you're not rushing and thinking you're spelling the words correctly, if you like already know that, all right, I might be at a disadvantage here, let me just take a second, slow and steady, tortoise in the hare situation, you could still come out on top.
Absolutely. And I don't disagree with that by any means. The interesting thing about how this challenge is called in the end is because they ended the challenge, the contestants were kind of walking away. They had a chance to talk to each other. Jeff even explains, "Oh, well, you guys walked past each other's boards, probably saw the words there. You probably talked to each other about like some of the words you found and things like that. So we're going to change the challenge now. Here's Outwit, Outplay, Outlast to just back into the Survivor Rewind here. And you have to find as many..."
They did it on purpose for us.
Yeah, exactly. all those years ago, we're preparing for this moment. Find as many 4+ letter words as you can in a minute. which is not easy to do. That's actual boggle at that point. So
Yeah, right.
it's so interesting because when you compare that to 48, where part of the check is saying what the word is. So Kyle, who has two of the blocks inverse on the backside and can't figure out what it is, says unforgettable out loud, and then all of a sudden Joe and Camilla know what the word is and can solve it from there.
Yeah, exactly. Then we have more cases here where it's basically a series of tasks that lead up to a boat paddle. You paddle out to grab the flag, paddle back in. Your boat has to be within the chain length, and all of your people that are supposed to be at the flag need to be at the flag at the time you put the flag in the hole. So Rotu finishes the challenge first, but Mataamu has kind of says, "Hey, Jeff, no, this is whack. The general wasn't here at the same time as everyone else. We should win this challenge. We had everyone here at the time we put the flag kind of on the pole because Rotu already inserted the flag." And then Jeff was like, "All right, I hear your contention.
Yep.
All right, I hear your contention. Let's do all of the checks and balances first. I'm gonna check the boat. Mataamu, your boat is within the chain link. Rotu, your boat is not within this chain. You lose just from that. So Rotu, you actually don't win the challenge. Mataamu, you win it. So it didn't even come down to the general not being at the flag. It was they had to go back to the boat for the boat chain link not being in within like looping it essentially.
Yeah, it's really interesting because after Jeff does say, your boat's not there, so you already lose, he adds in, the general was also not at your flag when you planted it, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
This is the jungle relay. It's a very interesting, I keep saying the word interesting, I need to find a better adjective now. It's a very exciting challenge.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. I quite enjoy this challenge. I think it's a very fun one to watch. And it's one of those old school Survivor challenges that I really miss.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes to show the importance, and this is something that we might not think about a lot as viewers, how diligent production is at explaining rules for these challenges. Like that's why, yes, you spelled the word wrong, but your eyeball is facing the wrong direction, so it's wrong. That's explained to the contestants before.
Yeah.
Like
they get a whole
aware
through and everything like that of the challenge.
And that's the big thing, is that like understanding the dream team walks them through the challenge. They like slowly go through. They can ask their clarifying questions, so they can know exactly what isn't allowed. And this is one of those things where it's like you are told specifically, and we are told in the. Granted, yes, it's a voiceover and everything.
Yeah, like they specifically emphasize this in the voiceover because it becomes part of the big ending to the challenge. Yep. But yes, it is like mentioned in the voiceover.
So it is part of the rules explanation, right? Like your boat has to be within this, which is a totally fair thing to say, because what otherwise changes, it's the only way to guarantee they have to make that run to where their flag has to be, which the general doesn't run fast enough. So it's so important.
They didn't have to re-hook up the boat, but sometimes they have to like hook their boat in when they bring it back to shore. So it's like similar to that. They just have to be in the link.
Yep. So really, if you're taking anything out of this, listeners, listen to rules. Rules are there for a reason sometimes. Pay attention to them so you don't lose automatically.
And our honorable mention here is Wendell. When he doesn't call out Jeff's name and he just kind of celebrates that he wins, and then Laurel beats him because she says, "Jeff, come check," and then he does and says Laurel wins, and Wendell's like, "Wait, what? No, I finished." But Jeff is like, "You didn't call my name," and that's kind of within that's like the rules, is you got to call my name. So Sorry.
It's the way, and I know, like, as we're thinking about this, does it matter to call for a check? It's a way to differentiate who clearly does it. Is honestly for the situation where there's a tie.
Like you hear it. Who says the name first, and you can clearly distinguish.
There's an auditory cue that makes it like, okay, this is who I'm checking first.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it also makes it easier for Jeff, who has to make that final call rather than just watching, right? Again, that's why we have Kyle step back and say the word he is spelling, because that is the check. That is the, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I've done it. This is what I'm doing. And we've seen it several times before, right? Like we see, branching back, I know in Thailand, right? There's the road trip for the car challenge.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like where you spell it and you have to say what it is. It's so, like, this goes all the way back in Survivor. There are just rules that have permeated, and it's because it makes life easier for production, which we don't think about sometimes because we're not out there producing Survivor.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on to Outlast. We are talking food etiquette. So we have the coconuts here. The episode title is Coconut Etiquette. So Mary is just chomping on all of these coconuts, not giving a damn because she's on the outs. So obviously we have to relate it to banana etiquette. I mean, it's of the same name. It's of the same, like, they definitely were pointing us like, hey, Survivor Rewind, here, it's right here. So James just kind of was grabbing a banana anytime he wanted to, and Amanda kind of had to school him on, well, if you're grabbing a banana for yourself, you have to ask other people if they would also like a banana. So Mary just cracking coconuts open for herself, she has to ask other people if they would like some or just not.
It's so interesting because one of the things we've been told many, many times, and even David on this season himself said it, right? Like, there's so much food available on these beaches in Fiji. But one thing to consider with 48, and as they're struggling to find these coconuts and everything, this is the end of 2 consecutive seasons of Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that food's probably picked through here. Yes, if you know what to look for and you're finding it, like, that's great. You can find food. But they're also there for 26 days still. So they have to spread out further and further to look for that food. And they have limits as to how far they're allowed to go and everything. So there are potentially moments where they run out of food. That being said, it's hilarious watching Eva complain about Mary opening a coconut when Eva's gone on like every reward.
Yes. And Mary's like, I'm not getting chosen for rewards, so I'm just going to eat this coconut. And Eva, it's like, I haven't eaten food. You've eaten food, so I'm just going to eat this coconut.
And as I said earlier, right? Like, this is Mary's being ostracized at this point. She's being shunned by the tribe. Why is she going to care if everyone's like, yeah, don't eat that coconut?
Yeah.
She's thinking, and we get it kind of towards the end where, I mean, she drops Russell Hance's name and then just like says, I'm voting for you, Joe. That is very much more a Sandra move than a Russell move. Come on, Mary. But the point being is, like, it's this vengeful take on I'm on the bottom. I'm mad at you. I'm
going to eat all your food.
I'm going to eat all your food, or I'm going to dump all your fish, like we see in The Great Lie, right? Like, there are moments in Survivor where we see this type of thing. It's kind of even like Chatia pouring the rice out in Cagayan. Like, obviously, those are like extreme examples of it. But this is Mary's like little, like, yeah, F you guys. I'm going to eat your food. You're going to have to live the next like 4 days with as minimal food as possible because you're being dicks to me.
And then we have something that's a little bit different. It's a little hierarchical. And that's in Redemption Island with the crispy rice that kind of is stuck to the bottom of the pot. And Boston Rob gets the crispy rice. But Philip wants a little bit of the crispy rice. And everyone at camp is like, no, that's Boston Rob's. And Philip's like, I can't have just a little scoop of the crispy rice. And it's like, no. This is Rob's rice. Like, you don't get this twisted. You can't take some of Rob's rice. So it's like a food etiquette of like Philip is just trying to like have some of the camp rice, and everyone else is like, no, me protect leader rice.
Yeah, and it's really weird. And obviously, I mean, it's no surprise that we are comparing 48 to Redemption Island at this point. I think it does feel kind of similar in a sense at this point. But this would be like if Mary was eating this coconut and Eve was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You got to give it to Joe.
Yeah.
Like that is the vibes here. And that's what makes this moment in Redemption Island so bizarre.
Mhm.
Because
It's like
again,
everyone knows this etiquette now that like Rob gets the crispy rice.
like, if I was there, I mean, I don't care. Like, give me rice, give me crispy rice. I don't care. But would I like that different texture? And also, like, that little bit of a crunch on rice is quite nice sometimes, especially because you have to think that it probably has a little more flavor too, because it's the bottom of the pot. But just spread it out, guys. Like, it's okay. There's enough rice to go around.
No.
You're eating it every day, and the same person doesn't need to eat the
No.
crispy rice every single time.
No. It's Rob's crispy rice, all right, John?
I know everyone's fawning over Rob in this season, but come on, like, it's just rice cooked a certain way.
But this was so this was so fun to have this scene though in where we're seeing more of this camp dynamic between Mary and Eva, between, you know, we got the secret scene or extended scene of this, and it's nice because it brings us back to these moments, especially because it's named after a previous moment. And I don't know, like I was saying before, they gotta have more of this going on, because then you do get to see dynamics, but within this type of scene, you get to see that like Eva's a little bit like miffed that Mary's eating 4 coconuts in the day.
It wasn't actually 4 coconuts, was it? Like, did we actually have that number that it was 4?
I think so.
Oh, that's a lot of coconut. Mary, I'm sorry. That's a lot of coconut.
I don't know if she shared any of it, but I think Kyle might have been like saying like she ate like 4 coconuts. That could have been, but
like hyperbole, but
yeah. But
yeah, I think it's just it's so interesting, and I agree with you for an instance. Survivor should be being back to its history. I think it almost set this episode up for failure by naming it similarly to one of the most revered episodes of the entire season.
I mean, it's the Tyson boot and the I can never remember boot order. It's the Tyson boot and it's
Tyson and James.
James.
Yeah.
Oh, duh.
Yeah.
And we get this scene. Like these are two massive boots. And this scene, like it's just like a huge episode in general.
Well, like Phil said in the recap on Wednesday or yesterday, I have a title for you. Like anyone can use it. Like ranking every episode of Survivor from banana etiquette to coconut etiquette. Right? Like that, and that's the response that this episode's getting, unfortunately. And I think it is unfortunate for the 48 cast to be kind of so closely associated with one of these all-time great episodes of Survivor in a negative way, just because of the way they decided to name this episode.
Should it be like Russell Feathers and Ruffle Feathers? Like, is that the next one?
Maybe. I don't know. I would not be surprised if we see that type of harkening back in 50 with episode titles. That would be cool. That would be really cool. Maybe this was a test by production to see if they could get away with this and how we the masses would respond to
the martyr approach and the something else approach. Yeah. Well, that has been our show, everyone. So no rewind tomorrow. You got it today, a day earlier. / it was our usual day, but we pushed to Fridays. Anywho, so watch season 7, Pearl Islands, episode 11, The Great Lie, for Saturday, and we will see you over on the Patreon. John, what do we got going on in the Specialist Universe?
Phil and Will did recap this episode yesterday. You know what? They're not holding back. in that recap. But it does. There's some really great conversation, so make sure you check that out if you haven't already. McKenna and Kyle recapped The Amazing Race earlier today. Then Phil and Blake dug deeper, and they really dissected what is it that is going wrong with this season. Why are people responding so negatively to this season? I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but I'm sure it's a very compelling conversation. If you hadn't heard, we have a brand new specialist joining us. Tegwith is officially part of the specialist team, and she and Phil will be doing a special Survivor 50 podcast this Sunday. Phil will also be joined by Sam from season 47 on Sunday for the predictions and power rankings. That should be great. Sam is quite the character. Very excited to have him on the podcast. And then, you know what? There's still 2 more weeks of Survivor. We'll still be back here. Phil and Will be back with a recap after next week's penultimate episode. McKenna and I will be back to recap everything. The Patreon keeps on going. Every season matters. Wrapping up Token Chains, moving on to Samoa. There's still Phil is still trucking through Australian Survivor Blood versus Water, which he has deemed the worst season of Survivor ever. So take that as you will. There's the casting perspective over there. There's the Q&A, the rewind. He and I are going through all of the Mission Impossible movies this month on the Patreon for $5 Tuesdays. The cinema specialists are actually back on Monday. We are doing our top 10 Tom Cruise movies. That's going to be a really fun podcast because let me tell you, I have consumed a lot of Tom Cruise movies in the last 2 weeks. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. That way you'll know when all of this stuff is going live, and we will see you next week.
Goodbye, everyone.